Now, so far, as we've created the 3D geometry in our scenes, we've only really viewed and displayed and interrogated our objects from within the viewport. But as we develop a scene and we start to add more complex geometry and we add materials and lighting to our scene, the idea really is to produce a more realistic looking rendering. And to do that, we need to employ a rendering engine to do that work for us. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how we can access that rendering engine and how we can produce a rendering, a still rendered image, which is going to allow us to create something much more pleasing and much more realistic. So I've got this scene here with a number of standard primitive objects, and I'm going to create a still rendered image of this scene. And to do that, I'm going to come up to my rendering area here, and I'm going to click on the render setup because I just want to check the rendering engine that I have employed at the moment. And we can see here under the renderer option here, I have a list of different rendering engines. I'm just going to choose the scanline renderer. This is a very basic rendering engine, and with that in place, and I'm going to leave all of these current settings. The one that I'm specifically interested in at the moment is the width and height. So I've got a sort of default width and height setting here. I'm just going to leave all these settings in place at the moment, and I'm going to hit this rendering button here. So I'm going to click on there, and we can see that we have a new window which opens up, and inside of that window is the rendered image using all of the parameters that are in place for this particular renderer and at this particular render window size. So you can see here that all the objects are in my scene, and they look very similar at the moment to the viewport display, but we will have the ability to create a much more realistic render using this particular option. I'm just going to close this down, this render window, and I'm going to choose a different rendering engine. I'm going to drop down this list, and I'm going to choose the Nvidia Mental Ray. Now, as I do that, as I select this option here, these tabs change. The information in these tabs is different depending on the rendering engine that you choose. This common tab is the same. I still have the ability to set my width and height, but when I render this now, you'll see that it's a slightly different process involved in the rendering. However, at the end of the process, the image at the moment is very similar. So until we start to elaborate our scene by applying more complex materials and lighting, at the moment we're getting very basic rendering information. At the moment there's no lighting in my scene, so I don't have any shadows. I've not applied any particular materials or textures to the objects. I'm just rendering the default colors that have been applied. So that's a quick introduction to how we can access our rendering engine, and by choosing the render button here, we can access and open up a new window which will give us our rendered scene.